It is really, really a pleasure to be able to present these programs within this auditorium. So I'm also very pleased that all of you are here today for part of our grand reopening. These art talks are very dear to us, and so we're really thrilled to have all of you here this morning. So this art talk is with Rafael Lozano-Hemmer, and I hope you all have had a chance to see his work in the exhibition, but we're very pleased to have him here to talk to you about his work in the exhibition, Future Shock, and more. Thank you so much, Rafael.
See. Does this work? Yes. All right. Excellent. Thank you so much, Joanne. I'd like to thank Irene and Brandy and everybody who has been involved in bringing me to Santa Fe for this reopening of this wonderful cultural facility. I should say I'm a Mexican-Canadian artist for about the past 25 years. I've been working at the intersection of performance art, architecture, new technologies, and have mostly done my work in public space. So about 50% of my practice is outdoors, large salle lumiere shows or large lighting spectacles, but usually interactive, and we'll see some of those. And then the other half of my practice is more pieces for museums or foundations or collections like what I have here. This is my second time to exhibit at site. I believe 2 years ago I did a piece called Pulse Index. Maybe you saw it. It was a fingerprinting system that you would insert your finger. It would scan your fingers, and then the entire projection was basically a collective portrait of the past 10,000 people who have inserted their finger. I love to say that to the public, is insert your finger into the orifice. And so that's what you all did, and created an artwork where the content was entirely crowdsourced, in other words, generated by the public. In this second occasion, for Future Shock, I'm presenting a project in collaboration with a Polish artist called Krzysztof Wodziszko. Is an artist that I have followed for a very long time. He's a pioneer of mapping, in other words, projections onto buildings to reinterpret what they mean. And when I met him, I was extremely honored because I've, as I said, been very inspired by his work, and we decided to do a collaboration. Collaboration is called Zoom Pavilion, and it's at the end of Future Shock. It consists of 12 cameras that track individuals in the room. But not only does it track individuals in the room, more importantly, it tracks relationships between individuals. So what happens is the cameras, there's some that are overhead cameras, similar to what you might find at a drone or a satellite view, so this kind of totalizing bird's eye view. Second type of camera is a perspective camera, the one that you might find at a shopping mall or a school or a prison. And the third kind of camera is a biometric camera that does face recognition, so it's a more personal kind of surveillance, like the one that is used to track you on your laptop. These three types of surveillance, of course, we all know about them, but the purpose of Zoom Pavilion is to make that surveillance tangible. So most often when we have surveillance, there's a little monitor where the authorities observe, and so you're made into this small kind of controllable image. Here we wanted to invert that. We wanted to grow the surveillance into an architectural feature, into something that would take over all of your peripheral vision and immerse you in that kind of reality that people like Snowden warned us about. And we all know that this is happening. I find it curious when people say, oh, I don't want to be tracked. It's like, well, then you're not aware of what's happening with your credit card or your cell phone. So while the message of being tracked is not new, it is an important message. It's something that we need to underline, especially when governments turn fascistic and they try and track us and sort of deter any potential for actual democratic protest or something like that. I don't know if you heard, but Black Lives Matter just got put into the FBI as a terrorist group, which is just unbelievable. So when all of these technologies are happening, which are inevitable, we have to question, well, how are they being used, and what are the mechanisms through which we can, as the people being tracked, problematize this kind of tracking. So from my perspective, I work with these technologies of surveillance, not so much because they're new or because of a moralistic or even ethical thing. I work with them because they're inevitable. They're part of our society, and the question I think for artists today is how can we misuse them to create environments that are more connective or poetic or critical. So in the case of Zoom Pavilion, I invite you, after you've seen this talk, if you want to go back, what it does is it tracks relationships. So it measures where you are in relationship to somebody else. And it measures the distance between you two, and it measures how long you were together. Because it turns out that my collaborator, Wojciech, he actually grew up in communist Poland. In communist Poland, having 3 people assembled in public space was suspicious, and 5 already illegal as an protest or as an assembly that was illegal. So this question of how we associate, what are the distances that we keep to each other, is what that project does. So you'll notice on the 4th wall, once you've been in the piece, you'll notice that the 4th wall, where the entrance is, there's an archive of thousands or hundreds of images of people, but they're recorded in couples. So you'll see yourself, perhaps with your friend, or maybe with someone you don't know. And the system is recording how long you were close to this person, and what distance you had. So if you're very close, contact is confirmed. If you're at 3 meters distance, then it's just a suspicious relationship, and so on. And the language used in the piece is the language of police agencies to determine whether information is being shared between potential democratic agents. So that's Zoom Pavilion. It's a piece from 2015. That piece was originally created for the Architecture Biennial in Beijing. And everything was going really well until about 10 days before the opening. The Chinese authorities kind of understood what the project did, and then there were technical problems that prevented us from presenting the project. So this kind of project is still possible in the USA. I don't know for how much longer, but just to mention that that was where it was originally tailored for, and now we've been touring it and showing it in different contexts. Excuse me. This is my first time in New Mexico. Yesterday I went both to Bandelier Park and Aspen. So I went to both. I did it. It was like so intense, and I was caffeinated, and I've got a cold. It was very heroic. You guys are so lucky with this incredible landscape. It really is humbling. I was completely enamored. Okay, so I'll calm down, speak slower. Today I'm going to present to you many videos of practice that I've had for about 25 years. So it's one of those where we won't really go into depth into each one of them, because that will make it a little bit more dynamic, the presentation. But at the end of the presentation, it'd be lovely if you have questions about a particular intervention or something, then we can make it more of a dialogue. So I'll start right away saying that my studio is in Montreal, Canada. We call ourselves Chickenadians, or Mexicanucks. That's Canada. The very offensive name that we have for ourselves is not wetbacks, but very wetback. Because by the time that you get to Canada, you cross the Rio Grande, but also the Great Lakes and Mississippi, and you're just soaking wet. My studio is composed now of 14 people. Half of them are artists or architects, half of them are programmers or engineers. And the engineers, they want to be artists, and the artists want to be programmers. And so it's a nice kind of confusing set of people. They come from 6 countries. We're very passionate about a collective sort of dynamic of creating these works. I don't have talent per se. My kids say that I'm not a real artist because I don't know how to draw. Then they say, but we'll teach you, kind of like, don't worry, your secret's safe with us, kind of thing. But the way I see my practice is much more like performing arts. I feel like I'm the director of a group of talented people. So, you know how in performing arts you always have like a director, but there's also the name of the composer and the actors and the lighting designer. All of those credits are important. In the visual art world, sadly, we're still on the 19th century idea of the artist as some kind of frontiers person or something like this, which is ridiculous. Most art is done in collaboration, at least the kind of art that I make. And so I try always to emphasize that part. If you go to my website, you see any project of mine, you'll have a detailed list of credits of who participated. It is still not a collective as in everything goes. There's still like a directorial bias and idiosyncrasy, a nightmare that we must pursue without discussion, and that's my nightmare. And oftentimes we get it wrong, but I do think that it's important to show that the projects are a platform made by several people. Okay, so in 1992, I did a tracking system that allowed the computers to know where you were. And as you walk around, an enormous eye would follow you anywhere you went. My wife is a choreographer, and originally she would dance and the eye would follow her. But what we're seeing here is a member of the public at the end of the performance trying it herself. And that was important because otherwise you'd think it was just rehearsed. But the moment you would go into the stage, you would realize that the eye really did follow you. In 1992, this was right after the first Gulf War, so the idea of these supposedly intelligent machines or bombs was something that we wanted to sort of capture in a very corporeal way. Can you guys come and sit down? There's lots of seats over here, and I'm going to speak for 3 or 4 hours, so don't, it's not good to stand.